Welcome to EIP IP meeting 82, and I have shared agenda in chat. It is issue number 235 on EIP IP repo. We have added item to be discussed from open issues and pull requests from the EIP GitHub repository. And we will also take a look at monthly stats for different reports that we publish. Starting with the first item listed here, which is discussed open issues. I think the first one with respect to patent has already been merged before this meeting, so we're going to mark them as checked. The next big item for discussion was proposed by Matt. I don't see him here. The item was issue with auto review bot. I don't know if anyone else here has any update or anything to share on that particular topic. If not, maybe we can get back to this topic when Matt joins the call. If today, if not, then we'll bring it in the next meeting. Moving on to the next item listed here, which is issues with CL link validation. This issue is created by Tim Bako, and we briefly discussed this also in the EIP editing office hour yesterday. Gajendra Singh, if you would like to maybe briefly talk about the potential roadblocker here and what we would like to get agreement on today.
Yeah, so the issue is that basically when PR people draft PRs, they mention pull request, and since we allow links in consensus specs and execution specs, so the expectation is that PRs to these repos should be allowed at least in the draft, and because in the draft there is a lot of discussion going on, and PRs. So PRs basically cover quite a number of files. So it can cover quite a large number of files, as well as there was yesterday we also discussed that if there was a possibility of putting in the commit link of the PR, but even that there is an issue that commit link generally, if you got from GitHub, it belongs to the source repository. So, which basically will not be consensus specs or execution specs. And again, commit can be pruned out, or when it's merged in the main repo, even then the commits, a new commit would be created, especially if it's splash and merge. So basically the idea is to allow pull request for drafts PR, and then basically, if on the review, then there has to be a static blob that points to these repos.
Sorry.
Okay, so so it looks like there is one commit related, like we can have a specific commit added to the EIP documentation. Does anyone disagree with that? Like, can we have it, or do we want to go ahead with to-do thing? Victor, I
My
see you
concern
unmute.
with
Oh, yeah, please go ahead, Sam.
my concern with allowing links in draft and then forcing people to remove them if they go to review um, is kind of two things. So things stick in draft for a lot longer than they're supposed to. So that's a common problem. And the other one is that it might hold proposals from going to review when they would otherwise be ready to do so if the pull request hasn't been merged yet. Um, but I think those are relatively minor concerns. I do worry that adding these like relaxations for draft proposals will lead to more of the similar things, but you know, we can cross that bridge when we get to it.
I'm generally in favor of allowing this, allow pull request in the draft status.
Yep, same here, in favor of allowing PRs in draft.
Sorry, I don't think I'm following. What do you mean by allow PRs in draft?
So basically allow referring to PRs to consensus specs and execution specs in the draft EIPs. So once they have to move to review, then we require them to have permalinks rather than PR links.
And what is this, like, when are we seeing this as a problem?
The current link bot disallow that, and it's also not included in the 5757. The proposal is to allow it, and we probably need to add it to 5757.
I mean, I understand that's the proposal. I just don't understand when do we want to refer to a pull request?
So there is a PR by dAppline, which basically refers to a PR, and Tim also has created an issue where he basically wants that one can refer to PRs for draft EIPs.
It's the issue number 7064.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I see it. I just don't understand why they don't merge this to consensus specs. Like, is there some sort of ordering problem?
I think so. I mean, with regard to that particular proposal, that merging to consensus specs is like taking it to final status. And I mean, basically putting in draft, accepting it, drafting means that, it is to be discussed and among the peers and all that, right? So basically merging to consensus specs and accepting in draft, in my opinion, are two different things.
I mean, this thing from dAppline is 2 lines. Like, he doesn't have the spec there. So honestly, I don't really see, like, yeah, I don't really understand why he doesn't write the spec in EIP.
Sorry. So basically that are diffs to the spec. So I mean, a person would mention the diff patch in the EIP.
Yeah, I don't really feel like we should be adding diffs to EIPs like this. It feels sort of weird.
I mean, that's the point that, okay, for drafts, at least we can allow it. And obviously post draft for the review status, it has to be a proper blob link to the specs or a directory over there. So the point is to relax for draft so that it can easily help in discussion and all that.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think that we should be allowing links to pull requests, frankly.
Yeah, I'm of the same mind.
I'm in favor of allowing pull request links to pull requests.
It's more a process, Mel. Like if we're allowing links for pull requests, that means that there's something wrong with the ordering of the process or the way that we think about the process.
There's a lot of distortion for me, but we're talking about a link to consensus specs, right?
It's a link to a pull request to the consensus specs.
And why can't it link into the most recent spec itself?
They haven't merged the change to the consensus spec yet, so there's not anything in the repo. There's no commit that they can link to.
And this is a draft we're talking about.
We're talking about allowing this for draft EIPs.
So he really has no choice but either to link to the commit or in English describe what it is the commit is, which provides a lot less information to the reviewers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that the way that we have it right now is very good, because then if you want to make an EIP to describe a CL change, you have to wait until you merge it to the CL. That's not really ideal. I agree. But I don't think that allowing links to PRs is the right approach.
PRs to the consensus spec are quite different because it's the only spec we've got.
I would still suggest that we just link to the most recent commit of the PR. Like, I don't think that works.
But the most recent would belong to the source repository, not to the consensus specs or execution specs.
Right.
So GitHub does add those commits to the destination repository, so you can link to them from there.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I just added a comment to the issue.
So I think I don't know why you are objecting to that. I think if you maybe help me understand it better. If the goal is to disallow link because the link can be disappearing, then linking to a commit, it can also disappear if it's not fully merged, right? If that is not merged in the master, basically.
I mean, even if it
Yeah.
is merged, it can be deleted.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's definitely like I said in the comment, I think there's a whole other class of problems we need to think about there. Like at least if you have the commit hash, you can verify that what you have is what's linked to in the commit or in the EIP. But yeah, the availability is definitely a concern there.
Yeah, but you can't guarantee that anyway. And then we're talking about draft, right?
I don't know how much special privilege we want to give draft EIPs.
We're just making it very
Agree.
hard. I think so if we understand it correctly, Sam and Matt is disagreeing, and then Gajinder and Gavin and I are agreeing. Should we put that on hold or and revisit under certain circumstance, or do we call that a consensus already?
Do we have any blocking objection? I mean, I really want to allow it because there's really no other way to refer to the consensus spec. And I think if it's committed, it's not going to go away.
We do allow linking to the consensus spec as long as it's committed. Yeah.
So what are they supposed to do?
So I'm suggesting they link to the most recent commit of the pull request as the link.
Except that that's not right.
What do you mean?
He's not linking to something which is in fact what he needs to link to. The alternative is tell him you can't put the draft in until the consensus spec corresponds to what the draft is depending on.
So
Yeah.
maybe you can explain why linking to the most recent commit isn't linking to the thing that they need to link to.
Be- Because they might have not yet accept that in consensus. They want to like propose it and have people discuss with it. That's
I
why they
don't,
don't get
yeah.
accepted yet, accepted and merged yet. That's the whole purpose of proposal, right?
Yeah, but so if you link to a pull request and somebody reads the EIP at that pull request, like they read that EIP today, and then the pull request completely changes purpose and does something else, uh, then what you reviewed when you read the EIP isn't what is getting like implemented. They don't match up.
I think we can allow for compare links so that the diff does not really change. So it seems like the consensus spec will have the commit, as Sam already mentioned in the comment. So now what a person can do is he can basically generate a compare link that will do a diff with a source commit and the target commit, and that will not that will that is a static one. So that should do it. It should just give the diff.
We have a general problem here then that if we have an execution layer proposal, or if we have a consensus layer proposal that depends on the other layer, the proposals, pretty much have to go in together. But, to say that we can't actually link from one to the other until there's a full PR ready to go makes it difficult. Pretty much they can't both go to final until it's together, and so both of them are actually in a sort of limbo. So I just don't see a choice in draft stage, and I think it's more useful to be able to point to that commit. And yes, during the draft stage, if that commit is no longer relevant, if the consensus group says no, there's no consensus on this, well, then the execution layer spec has a problem, but it'll just have to be worked out through the draft stage, and through the review stage, and through the last call stage, and all the way to the final stage before we actually know that a given proposal is compatible with the other layer. It's a problem we've created or that we have to put up with by having two different layers that are independently specified. You hear me. I don't need to repeat that.
Yeah, like to be completely clear, I think I am 100% in support of linking to the consensus specs. I think we need to have links to consensus specs. Just I don't like linking to PRs.
As an alternative here, I'm just wondering, like, if we allow this thing, like, even if the PR is not merged, be there in the draft form, but we can design the bot, if we can update the bot in a way that when the proposal is moved from draft to review, make sure that pull request is merged, so we do not end up in, like, reviewing the proposal all over again when it reaches to last call or final. And generally speaking, when it is a core proposal that is there for last call, when it gets into test net phase, right? So if we can update our bot at the time of a status change of review, what do people think about that?
Yes, I think that's what the proposal is asking for, is that we allow PR links in draft, but not in other statuses.
So maybe we can think of, like, do we have like enough support for that, or do we have someone strongly opposing to that?
I think that that's generally okay for having a bot. If I understand you correctly, you're suggesting that if there's a bot that can help safeguard that, that would be good. I'm in favor of that too. I just think that that shouldn't be a blocking requirement before this get implemented in the process.
See a comment, no more bots. But I would like to understand, is it possible with EIPW?
Yeah, I mean, EW can do whatever you want it to. So if you wanted to allow links to pull request in draft and then not in review, it can totally do that.
So,
So just I pasted a link. So basically, why can't we just allow these kind of links where it's basically not a PR link, but it's like the commit is there in the repo. Now people can generate a diff link basically if you
Yeah,
click
that'd
on
be
this,
fine.
it will give it.
I have no problem with allowing links like that.
Yeah, so basically this will solve the problem of showing the diff.
okay. So in that case, I'm assuming that the bot will be checking for that diff commit instead of the PR. Like we are still in a position to stop that unless that is merged in the final spec of consensus.
Is that not what the bot is already checking for?
We can just expand the regex. That was yeah.
Which one is the diff link? It has the commits?
Yeah, it has like some master 2 or 3 dots. I don't ever remember which, and then the commit.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't even need to be master. It can be fixed to even a master commit hash. So we can sort of make sure of that.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah, I'm okay allowing links like that. I'm okay allowing links to just the tip of the pull request. Those are both fine. As long as it has a commit hash in the URL, I'm perfectly fine with it.
That sounds like a consensus.
Right. So as a summary, we can state that links to pull request are allowed under 2 circumstances: when it is tip of the commit and when it includes a diff and commit hash together. But again, just for authors to be aware of that there could be a bot check when status is changed from draft to review. Is that the correct summary, Sam, and anybody else?
Yeah, I think we still wouldn't allow links to a pull request, but that's a technicality. It would just be you'd link to the commits in the pull request. But yeah.
Sounds good.
I'm a little worried that this is like a GitHub feature rather than the branch actually being part of the repository.
Yes, it is that, like, it is a problem, but it's a separate problem. Whether we solve it by having a backup of those repositories with those commits specifically, or something else, but like at least right now it is possible to write a verifiable backup of the EEPS repository if we want.
It seems we can't really solve these problems until we solve the issue of how to reconcile the consensus specs and the execution specs. If we pull the consensus specs into the EIP process, it gets a lot easier.
Hopefully, we'll get there too very soon. Right now, we do not have exact process for consensus specs moving with the EIP process. But yeah,
Yes.
if anyone could maybe write the response or the summary for this particular action item in the issue so that issue can be closed, or if all CoreDev would like to discuss it in CoreDev meetings, they get to know what is the consensus here with respect to this particular issue.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Just sorry, just
Yeah.
briefly on that. If they're reconciled, then there will be an EIP for the consensus change, and it just becomes linking from one EIP to the other, and they need to move together. I think that solves all the problems, but we haven't come to any consensus on whether and how to pull the processes together.
I think the consensus outside of the EIP editors is to not pull the processes together any more than they already are.
Well, this is one of the problems created by trying to treat them as completely separate. I don't like that, but so it goes.
Maybe that's an issue for another time, when we get like a strong support in that and we have a proposal, we can bring it in the EIPAB meeting. Anyone would like to add anything else before we move on to the next item? So I'm taking that Gajendra Singh will be responding to that issue, so that the issue can be closed, and will also write a comment to the respective pull request with the EIPs. All right, so that's all about it. Moving on to the earlier item that we missed when Light Client was not here, so just want to briefly check on that, is the issue with auto review bot. Where are we with that? And do we have a solution, or do we get to know why that was not working?
I have no updates since I turned it off, so I don't know where we are with that.
This is about the auto review bot, not the number one. So did you by any
They're the
chance
same bot.
Okay, oh, they are the same one. Okay, perfect. Okay, so the error that we received, that was mentioned in the Discord chat, was because of this review bot. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know much about the review bot, so I can't really help there.
I don't know, Matt, if you have any specific question. I know Panda is not on the call, but he left some comments on the Discord. If you have any specific question, maybe we can communicate when he listens to this meeting later on.
I mean, I've posted on Discord and I've opened some issues, and there's still problems with the bots. So yeah, I would just like the bots to A, not put lots of errors in your notifications, and B, to merge whenever you undraft a PR without closing and reopening.
Yeah, that has been an issue for quite some time. Like, editor has to close and reopen, and then only it merges.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a bad look on the repo.
Okay. We can let Panda know about it, and hopefully he'll follow the meeting recording later on, so he'll be aware of it. Moving on to the next item here, that is ERC's status advancement criteria. I suppose this was proposed by Victor. But before that, I just read a comment. Sam mentioned that he may have to take off in a few minutes. Anything specific, Sam, you would like to discuss?
Nope.
I see a proposal which is there in final status, like the proposal is already in final and there isn't some update for that proposal to be, some specific changes for that proposal, and the PR number is 7077. If anyone has any strong opinion on that, we can get there too. Okay. Okay, then let's go sequentially. Coming back to the proposal ERC status advancement criteria, Victor, if you would like to briefly explain what is the concern here and what are we looking from EIP editors group?
Yeah, thank you, Pooja. So I have this presentation, and hopefully that if you're not at your screen, that's fine too. I'll just verbally also explain. So generally, we're talking about a proposal for formalize how ERC advanced status, because currently it's pretty subjective, to my opinion, and then it also reduces the chance that we're capable of scale up our reviewer, tech review, or editor review queue. So the general goal is to kind of find what we have in consensus, how status advance, and then so that we can make it better. And less arbitrary. And just want to mention that the prior art that we have is that core EIP require adoption to finalize, and also BIP and PEP both that EIP has been inspired by requires adoptions to finalize. It seems a common practice to require adoptions to finalize. And also it helped us generally kind of test the implied requirements whenever we allow a ERC to advance, which is soundness and usefulness. I generally personally apply that whenever I am an author. I don't apply those requirements when I'm an editor for guarding the status, but like as a community member, as an author, I would assume soundness and usefulness is a lot of time what people look for. And so also to mention that it's interesting that I am doing some research. Not only PEP is requiring reference implementation to be completed and to be finalized, and our core EIP, of course. The RFCs are also doing it. So if there's any argument that hey, ERCs are requests for comments, and then they're different from the other EIPs that needs the core EIP that needs a hard fork or anything. It's interesting that RFC, which is what ERC is inspired by, also has similar requirement, where proposed standard, in their case, it seems to be draft in our status that require no reference implementation, but basically require design choices resolved, and then also desired and desirable and strengthened arguments for the proposal. And the draft, in their case, which is I see in our case as reviews, require at least 2 independent and interoperable implementations. And when it needs to be and it needs significant implementation and successful operational experience to become an internet standard. And so the goal, the proposal here is that we require at least no requirement for a draft, but require 1 implementation to move to review, and I don't know, 2 or 3 independent implementation to last call. And I understand that like how is it called independent is difficult, but like at least have 2 or 3 implementations for it to be standardized would be something interesting to me. My question now for the editor and everyone who is on the call is that how much implementation should we require, if at all? And should we use status, or should we create something different? Like I know that internet RFC use maturity. So we can either use the status or we can use a different thing. So these are the 2 questions.
So how much work do you want to do to verify that a reference implementation is an actual reference implementation?
I think to begin with, I will be happy to review that, and then I'm sure that it can be a very clear, it can be a very clear ask if we want to ask for technical peer reviews, as long as we have a clear ask. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I do understand, and I agree with you that the mandate to review to validate that a reference implementation exists is over a more overhead work for either the editor or technical peer reviewers. I believe that could be solved if we have a clear boundary of what to review. Yeah, I also, any other comments or questions?
I'm mostly, oh, go ahead, sorry.
It basically looks pretty good to me. You know, a few details, but I just don't see any huge problem with it. I wouldn't go for just another variable at this point. The status boundaries look about right. I don't see a big problem with what counts as an implementation. If we're, I mean, pretty much, I think that means it runs on the main net. There should be test cases at some level in the EIP. So if it runs on the main net and passes the test cases, it's an implementation.
I'm taking notes. Thank you, Greg. You suggest that status, just use status without creating a new variable, right?
Yeah, it shouldn't go to review unless the EIP has test cases and the implementation runs on the main net and passes the test cases.
Okay. Deploy it on mainnet, pass test cases. And just also mention that I think perhaps test case is a great idea. I love that. So I incorporate it in the proposal. One thing that I really like what Sam was doing for wallet is that to propose a test suite for the compliant wallet. And that basically reduces or at least increase the scalability for verifying compliance. So I really like that. I also see that Matt is responding that 3 seems too high.
So you were saying earlier that if a reference implementation exists and passes the test cases, so does that mean we need to run the test cases against the 3 reference implementations? Is that what us as editors are going to be doing?
I think we might ask the author to demonstrate that. Would that be okay? So we can shift the burden to the burden of proof to the author to say, hey, and then to my understanding, they are more than happy to do that, which is, hey, these are the you probably want to also verify the implementation, and by doing so, you can either manually verify them, or you can create test cases so your compliant can run it against them. And I think the compliance where the adopters probably want to have some formal test cases as well, so that it reduces their overhead of like manually checking whether they comply or not. That just a little bit of overhead, but I think technically that makes everything scalable and make everyone happier.
So I don't want this to sound harsh, but it really just sounds like you're saying we want authors to ask ChatGPT to rewrite their reference implementation 3 times, and then that's it. Because like there's no. I mean, obviously this will work for like, good faith authors, but someone who just wants to get their proposal in will just make 3 different reference implementations, upload them on 3 different GitHub accounts, and then that's it. Their proposal will continue, right?
I think you are, if I understand you correctly, you are saying that authors can create different reference implementations which aren't independent.
And we have no way of verifying that they're independent. Yeah.
And it's basically a civil attack, right? In some sense.
Yeah, exactly.
I think here's what I think. First of all, you can't even like the alternative is we don't require it, which then we relinquish our ability to even verify any reference implementation exists. So having requirement for reference implementation or adoption is no worse than current scenario. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that we do understand that like if we treat it as a security problem, sure, it's hard. You can't like completely rule out the chance of civil attack in this case. But a lot of authors are reputable. And then a lot of people who deploy smart contract have track records on chain, which is not too hard to spot a problem. And like completely hiding the track from it is also very hard. So I wouldn't kind of think of that as too much of blockage for adopting this as a procedural requirement.
I'm mostly just wondering, like, what is the like goal that you're trying to achieve by requiring additional reference implementations?
So the general motivation is to find a social consensus of what it takes to advance ERC status. Because alternatively, currently, I feel it's a little bit too arbitrary. And I don't want to tell the ERC authors that, hey, so long as you don't have links in your ERCs and you comply with all formats, and so long as one of the editors are happy, we're allowing you to advance to final. What I really want is to make this process less arbitrary, where given the scenario, any editors or any good faith, common sense editors would be able to make similar judgments, so that now that we have 7, we can advance to like more people in the future, like with similar approach. Like we call editor, we call them technical reviewers. Do we create separate roles for that? That's fine. But like having a subjective, more or less subjective criteria for advancing them is the goal, and can help scale up our EIP reviews.
But what problem is this solving?
Well, the subjectivity.
Yeah, the subjectivity.
So
what subjectivity do we have right now? Because it seems like as long as the person just shows up and moves their EIP to the next status and doesn't break any of the very basic rules, they can move their ERC to final. And we don't have that many ERCs even going to final right now.
If I started to like allow the very basic rule of currently, there's basically no requirement for ERC to advance.
Right. So that is completely unsubjective as well, right?
Which is making ERC less useful. It doesn't check for soundness. It doesn't check for usefulness. So that's what I want to propose to make ERC better. Like, you spend so much time discussing how to disallow links. I think there are more important things to make ERC really works and then really useful. And then we do seem every once in a while the question comes up, hey, is this ERC useful at all? Or should we reject them or not? But given the standard, if we are approaches so long as authors show up and advance their ER status, then that question should not come up. I presume there's some implied social consensus that we require soundness, we require usefulness. But I don't know if that is your consensus. Like, can I throw meaningless thing on ERC draft?
So the
I
only
don't think
two
so.
things that I review for are does it meet a minimum bar of like you different parties need to communicate with each other? So that's kind of like the absolute minimum bar for making a standard is, are there going to be multiple implementers or multiple consumers of it?
Yeah.
And does it meet the formatting requirements? And obviously proofreading and spell checking and stuff. But that's it. That's all I check for.
Yeah, but the first one currently, I agree with you 100% both case. And then in the first one, I think you mentioned that you asked yourself when you're reading a draft that does it need communication between multiple adopters, right? And if that is the case, the proposal here is to actually write it down and then tell authors what it means to require for a ERC to demonstrate that it needs to demonstrate to different adapters.
But I think that can be a hypothetical argument. It doesn't need to be you need multiple reference implementations from independent parties. It just needs to be you need to write in your motivation who you think the multiple parties are going to be, and then that's it.
I think that's pretty subjective. If you anytime like anyone can show up, like just like you, I'll play the devil's advocate. Just like you said, anyone can just do ChatGPT 3 times and implement them. They can very well just argue on their ERC says, hey, we are 3 of us, and then we need to communicate with each other, and then here is the ERC. So that renders that's the same, that applies the same to your
No, but like I think
arguments.
that's not a Sybil attack though. It's like if you can construct a scenario where multiple parties need to talk together about a standard,
How do you test that?
even if they're the same party, like it doesn't matter because it's hypothetical. If there could be 3 parties that need to talk together about something, whether there are 3 parties or not, you can standardize it.
I think that's yeah, I think that's I hear you. I hear that you think that so long as they want to communicate themselves, they can. I'm just going to feel that it's very it's not demonstrating soundness and usefulness as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, so I think the real problem you're trying to solve, and you know, forgive me for speaking for you here, but is you want to improve the reputation of ERCs, like the process itself, right? You want ERCs to meet a higher bar than they currently meet so that people trust ERCs more. Whereas I would like to keep ERCs like we just publish whatever people send us for the most part, and other people have to decide the quality. And I think that's the root of our disagreement. Is that roughly correct?
I think when you apply that to the link requirement, that seems not the case.
Right. So linking requirements, formatting of the documents, those are all things for like, they are for the process itself. Like we want to guarantee availability, but we don't guarantee soundness. So we choose what we guarantee, I think.
So yeah, I think if you lay out that you think that ERC can be meaningless, or the meaningfulness is for general reader who don't necessarily adopt them, who don't necessarily use them to judge, where I generally believe that an ERCs needs to be adopted to be meaningful. I think if that is a categorization of our differences, I agree.
I would be happy enough to see a requirement for one implementation and test cases to get from after it's not the editor's job to actually do it the implementation could be wrong and it might not actually pass the test cases. It's the review process that's part of that yeah and passes the test cases. And I don't really see the need for multiple implementations. I understand that would increase usefulness, but I'm happy to treat usefulness as a different issue. And I'm not sure that multiple implementations really helps that a lot. And it's a lot to ask.
Well,
That
yeah,
is, sorry, teams don't really want to implement something that's not already, a standard or close to it. It's just a lot of work for no purpose. So you could have a group of 10 people who say, yes, we really want to do this, and here's our implementation, and telling them, go find 2 other groups to implement it. It's
yeah, I see. I hear that you you are happy to see one implementation, and you don't you think it's too high to ask for multiple implementations. Is it okay that we say that having one implementation from draft to review is consensus, and then we don't have a consensus about what it take to move to review to last call?
I'm more okay with requiring one, but I guess I'm not strongly objecting to requiring one, but I'm not in favor of it.
So you're neutral, basically. You're not blocking requiring
I'm
one.
not blocking, but I'm slightly negative on requiring one.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. And I saw that Matt says 3 for last call is too high. Matt, do you have any concerns for it requiring one from review to from draft to review?
I mean, what do you mean by require one? Like, do you want to change EIP1 to say all ERC type EIPs that want to go from this status to this status have to have one reference implementation? Or like,
Yeah.
where does this? Yeah, I mean, I feel like this should just be imposed by yourself, and you should say like, I would like to see like a reference implementation before merging this to review. And if the person says, that's not an EIP1, or I don't want to do that for some reason, then just let them go through.
So make it a suggestion and not a requirement.
Make it a should, not a must. Is that make it a should rather than must?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, I will make it a suggestion. Can we make that suggestion into EIP1?
I think if we want to go ahead with that, it would be better to be reflected in EIP1, but we can also maybe learn more about it by if you can create a pull request there and see if there is any strong objection to that, because this discussion is here in the closed room. When we have a pull request open, probably people will come and add more feedbacks.
Sounds good. I'll create a pull request for EIP1.
Yeah, okay. I'm happier with must, but should is strong enough, and we can wait to see what our experience with that is and move it to must if it really does help. I think it will.
Thank you.
It will improve the quality of seeds, and it will help with just the sheer number of them we've been trying to deal with, and certainly be a better solution than splitting the repos and other such.
Sounds good. Yeah, I totally agree.
All right. So we are at time. Thank you, Victor, for sharing this. I hope the recording of this will be helpful for people to follow the discussion as well as why we are reaching to that kind of consensus. And when we have the pull request, we can probably take it from there. We have just 1 minute left. I would like to have attention of editors for the PR number 7077, what people think about getting it merged. I mean, if there is any strong consensus right now, I mean, no objection, it can be merged. But if people think that it needs to be discussed because this proposal is already final, we can take it on the pull request.
I think I'm fine with it. It's just formatting changes and moving a bracket to a new line. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Anyone here objecting to that? Okay, fine as well. So yeah, if someone can maybe merge it, because I don't think it's blocked by author. It's just that any editor may have to merge it.
It'll need an author approval.
Oh, it would. Okay, perfect. Cool. So I will add that in the summary as well. Thank you everyone for joining. And I have added the month summary for EIP editing. Sorry, EIPS Insight. We don't have time to go through it, but people can check the link added here in the agenda. Thank you everyone for joining us here today. I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.